I've got a few thousand miles now on and off road on the newish Tusk 2-track tires, including 2,000 miles down to the beginning of the NorCal BDR, riding the NorCal BDR and riding home. So I finally feel like I have enough time with these tires to give you a comprehensive review. Let me start out with some basic stats and info on these Tusk 2-track adventure tires. All of this is directly from Rocky Mountain's website, just so we're on the same page about what we're talking about tire-wise. Rocky Mountain claims these are a 70% dirt, 30% street tire. I might argue they're a little more aggressive than that. They are one of the most aggressive tread patterns you can get for a big ADV bike without going to a full knobby. Originally, they were only available in 18-inch rear tire sizes, but they've expanded this and the Waypoint tires. They are also now available in 17-inch rear sizes. So that covers 90% of the adventure bikes out there on the market, including the KLR, the Himalayan, those with the 17-inch rear. Rubber compound is designed to be durable and long-lasting. The knobbies are strategically reinforced and connected to provide increased handling and stability. It's worth reiterating this, and you can see it in the knob pattern. I'll show it to you. The knobs are connected between the center knobs and the outer knobs, and that is designed to give you more stability when cornering aggressively. It'll keep those knobs from folding over and giving you a little bit of a butt pucker as the bike makes a sudden movement. They're really stable even on the road. Large tread blocks in the middle for consistent on-road handling and longer life. It is that sort of consistent strip of rubber right down the middle of the tire for when you're riding straight up and straight down the highway. Deep tread gives the tire a tough, aggressive look and feel. I agree with that. On their website, they claim they are tested in the most brutal conditions, and you know, that sounds like marketing hype speak, but when I was hanging out with those guys in Death Valley, listening to the stories they were telling about getting stuck in the snow when they were out testing the tires on their way to Death Valley, I believe it. These are very thoroughly tested tires. They are directional, they're tubeless and tube type ready, and they are DOT compliant, which is sort of important for a tire you're going to ride on your ADV bike on the road. Price-wise, they are $100 to $130 for a rear tire. Yes, you heard me right. That is the rear tire, and the front tire, the 90-90-21, is 80 bucks. So like our adventure bikes, our adventure tires have to do a lot of different things, right? A lot of things we ask those tires to do, like our bikes, are counterproductive and counterintuitive. Adventure tires have to perform well off-road, but still be tolerable on long highway days. Adventure tires have to last a long time, even with extended road riding, but also be soft enough to grip the gravel, the mud, the sand, and the other softer off-road surfaces. Tires have to have a tread pattern with big enough gaps to corner on loose surfaces and clear mud, without the individual lugs being so pliable and small that they'll fold over with a big heavy bike cornering aggressively on the street and or wear down too quickly with a big heavy bike on them. This dichotomy often leads to tires that only do half of the equation well, or tires that do both okay, meaning both on and off-road okay, but neither very well. I'm no tire expert, so take all of this with a grain of salt. But as a weekend warrior type who is lucky enough to get to go out and take long trips and spend more time in the saddle than most, I have to say I'm incredibly impressed with these tires over the thousands of miles that I've ridden on them. So let's start with the good. What do I like about these Tusk 2-track tires? Well, shockingly, there's a lot. They have big aggressive knobs and big gaps for clearing, lots of traction surfaces in every direction, forward, backward, side to side, lots of edges to bite, and they don't wear down super quickly. I haven't had a lot of edge rounding, even with a couple thousand miles. The center knobs are big enough for good contact patch on the pavement, which reduces wear and also reduces your ride noise when you're just going straight down the freeway. It's very tolerable. Not non-existent, but the noise is very tolerable. The tires have a very stiff sidewall, which is better for heavier bikes carrying passengers or camping gear, and it makes the tire last longer. They are dual-purpose tires. They can be used tubed or tubeless, and you can switch between the two. So if you're running a tubeless tire like me on the 790 and you get into a situation where your sidewall is slashed and you can't patch it or plug it, you can throw a tube in. I know that's not super unusual, but it is nice. Some tires don't offer that option. They've heard your feedback and expanded the sizes available, so you now have 17 and 18-inch rear sizes. I am astounded at how good these tires are in the sand. The first time I took them on the sand was in Redmond, and I didn't want to go, and I thought it was going to be terrible, and I got out there with these tires, and it was like no different than the full knobbies I've run out there a bunch of times, even on this big heavy bike. So the traction is very good. They're great in the mud. They're great in the gravel. They're great pretty much everywhere. I can push these tires as hard on the road as I'm willing to go, and I don't really see any sliding or nothing to make me ride less aggressively, even on a bike that is as quick as this 790 and the Norden I had them on before that. I have rarely or almost never had traction control kick in when leaned over aggressively in a corner, so they hold their line plenty well for such an aggressive knobby. They also last a super long time. The front tire has 3,000 miles on it and it looks almost new, probably 80% there. The rear has 2,500 miles on it. It looks about halfway done, so even if I only got 4,000 miles out of that rear tire, that's pretty good for the price. My guess is it'll be closer to 5,000. And the most important pro for these tires is the price. The price is insane. Just to give you a point of comparison in case you've never shopped for adventure tires before, the MotoZ Tractionator Rallz, that is the most comparable adventure tire that I've used to this tire. The front, a 90-90-21, in a MotoZ, or MotoZ, whichever you want to say, is $120. The Tusk 2-track front in the same size is $80. The MotoZ Tractionator 150/70/18, that is the rear tire, an 18-inch rear, is $253. The same size Tusk 2-track tire, $130. That is just over half the price. I would say that the Tusk 2-track tires are 90% as good, if not just as good. So the price is stupid, but it's not all good, right? No tire's perfect. There are some things I don't like about these tires. One, they're a little loud on the highway. All aggressive tires are, and these are no exception. It's tolerable. It's less than my Tractionators, which had a whine that even at 70 on my Tenere, even with earplugs in, would give me a headache. These don't do that, but you do notice the noise. They're not quiet. Side-to-side traction on these tires feels a little bit more squirrely than the Tractionators. It just feels like it's prone to kick out at the rear a little more when I give it a ton of gas. Part of that is the tread, it tapers at the end on the 2-tracks and it doesn't on the Tractionators. Part of that is this bike is just pretty powerful, and part of it is I'm not leaning over far enough and getting into the more aggressive side knobbies, but it does feel like it wants to step out a little earlier, particularly on dry surfaces like hard pack with dirt on top. You definitely feel a difference. They are super stiff tires, so mounting is fun. I actually paid to have them put on the first time, but I did swap the rear tire myself after the recall, which they took care of in an admirable fashion, by the way, so I would not make that a bad thing. In fact, the way they handled it is kind of a good thing. But anyway, it's tolerable, it's doable. I did it at home with hand tools, but it's not something I'd be excited about doing in the field. The front can feel a little bit washy when you get aggressive in soft surfaces. Now, my only crash on the California BDR North was a front end washout. Now, I was sitting back on the seat, kind of half-ass riding, and I also didn't adjust the rear preload correctly, and I wasn't standing up when this happened, but I was turning, hit some unexpected sand, and the front just went out from underneath me. There were a few times where I felt like I couldn't go into a corner as aggressively as I wanted to. Because of that, part of it is it's just harder to get all the way forward on this bike, especially with the tank bag I was running. Part of it is the tire is maybe not as grippy as I would like in the front, but this is not me saying it washes out all the time. You find the limitations earlier than I expected. Let's just say that. Other big con to these is they're only available online. You can't go look at them ahead of time. Shipping is free when you buy anything over $75 from Rocky Mountain, at least in the US, which is good. But if you have to ship them back, that's a pain. Shipping to outside the US is even worse. It might be cheaper for you to find a European tire distributor or a Canadian tire distributor, not the store, but you know what I mean, that you can get them locally and pay less shipping than it would be to order these from Rocky Mountain in the US. I don't know. I just know that shipping sucks when you're like trying to ship outside the country. And they have a harder compound, which means longer lasting tread life, but can lead to less wet pavement traction. I've heard that complaint a few times. I came home from the California BDR and did 2 hours in a torrential downpour, and I was passing people and stuff, and it was fine. I'm not riding super aggressively in super wet conditions, and you shouldn't be either. But something to know with this knobby or this aggressive tire, like all aggressive tires, your wet pavement traction will be not as good as it would be with a street tire. And they're made in China, so if that's a concern, if that bothers you, don't buy them, and or they may get more expensive with political changes, who knows, but just be aware, these are tires made in China, but sold, designed, and distributed by Rocky Mountain in Utah. But how are they so cheap? Well, I won't give you the full explanation because I've gone over it a bunch of times, but basically, Rocky Mountain doesn't have to deal with distributors or retailers. They are the manufacturer, there is no distributor, and they are the retailer, which means and they can run on thinner profit margins, which means they can still offer a quality product for less money. So I think these tires are as good, or 90% as good as the Tractionators, and they're way less expensive, and that's why they're able to do that. Speaking of the Tractionators, let's talk about a direct comparison between the two tires. So Tractionator Rallz are the only other super aggressive ADV tires that I have a ton of experience with. They're a great tire that I'm highly recommended. I liked them, they were just loud. So when compared directly with the two tracks, Tractionators are pretty similar in terms of traction and performance. The Tractionator is much louder on the highway, but felt less washy in the front, but we're talking like 10%. Tractionator felt a little bit more resistant to sliding the rear end out. Again, 20%, 10% maybe. Manageable, but noticeable. And I attribute this to the center knob design being a little different. I also didn't feel like the Rallz lasted as long. I felt like they would wear out more quickly than these have, but I didn't have a set long enough to tell you for sure. Now, a lot of people skip over these tires because they're a 70-30 and they think, I don't need to go off-road that much. But in my mind, and again, this is me as a rider personally, but I don't understand why you would run anything but the most aggressive tire you can stand on the road, because you just never know what you're going to encounter. So if you plan on leaving the pavement at all, I would encourage you to think about a more aggressive tire like this, because as I mentioned, I can ride as hard and as aggressively as I want on the pavement. They last a long time and they're super cheap. So your other anxiety about wearing out good tires too quickly is kind of mitigated by that. And I would much rather be wearing out a more aggressive tire a little faster than get up in the woods somewhere and have to get through a mud pit or across some sand on street tires. Personally, your mileage may vary, but I would encourage you to think about a more aggressive tire. The only real downside is tire noise and a little bit harder wear, but you're still going to be able to ride on the street fairly aggressively. I think the idea that you can't on an aggressive tire like this is a myth. You can definitely ride hard on the street. I've watched people, followed people I couldn't keep up with doing it. So what's my final conclusion? Well, before I give it to you, let me just reiterate. Rocky Mountain does not and has never paid me to make a video for them. They've never paid me for a promotional anything. I've never gotten paid by them for anything other than their affiliate program. I am free to give negative reviews of things. It will not impact my ability to get product from them for review so long as I keep selling things through the affiliate program, which I do. There is no reason for me to lie to you about the quality of these tires. Having said that, it's gonna sound like I'm a shill and I'm lying, but these are the best value in adventure tires. In my opinion, if you want the most aggressive tire for the money, just like the Tusk D Sports are my favorite dual sport tires because they cost half as much as anything comparable and work just as well. Now, Tusk also makes the Waypoint tire, so they're also a great value. I haven't ridden them enough to do a full review, but if you want a slightly less aggressive tire that still has a nice knobby, same thing, and I imagine it's very similar. If you want aggressive ADV tires like I like to run, it's hard to beat. In fact, I can't think of a tire that beats these Tusk 2 tracks in terms of performance for your money. Think about it this way. It is $373 for a set of Tractionator Rallz, but $210 for a set of Tusk 2 tracks. Even if they're 70% as good as the Rallz, and I think it's more like 90 or 95, that is still an insane value. If you're a person who worries about wearing down your expensive tires by riding on the road too much, buying a tire that costs half as much reduces that anxiety significantly. So I always worry about wearing out my knobbies riding on the street too much. I'm thinking about it when I'm on the street, but not with tires that cost this much. Admittedly, they send them to me for free, but even if they didn't, these are the tires I would buy. I just wouldn't see the point of paying more and getting slightly more performance, but less tire longevity. They're a stupid value. They shouldn't exist for this price, and if I were an adventure tire manufacturer, I'd be scared. I'd be scared. With the D Sport, the Waypoints, and these 2 tracks, I feel like Rocky Mountain is coming for your bottom line. You better find a way to make your tires cheaper. So I'll put a link in the description to these tires if you want to check them out on Rocky Mountain's site, and that link will be an affiliate link, so if you decide to pick up those tires or anything else while you're on the site that does support the channel, I thank you very much for using those links so consistently and supporting the channel, particularly now that my daughter is graduating from high school, has gotten into college, and now I have to pay for that. So thank you for clicking on those links and contributing to Little Dork's college fund. Very significant impact on my bottom line, and I couldn't be more grateful. Don't forget that you can support the channel anytime you shop at Rocky Mountain, Motocamp Nerd, Revzilla, Amazon, Cyclops, Butler Maps, and any other number of places. Those links are always in the description. You can bookmark them. You can just come back to any video. They should be in the description or a pinned comment. Doesn't matter what you buy. As long as you click the link first, I get credit. So thank you very much. I appreciate that support. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I appreciate you watching this video. But for now, and as always, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. And please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Oh, thank you.
Excellent!